Hi everyone, Scott with Dearly Departed Tours here. In front of me on this table is my Lucille Ball I Love Lucy collection, most of it anyway. This stuff was in storage. Actually, it wasn't on display for, years in our museum, but since we closed down, everything's been put into storage. So I decided to take them out of storage and show them to you. But first, we're going to go to Lucy's house. We'll be passing very briefly on the right the Beverly Hills Hotel. We're turning right next onto the cursed Benedict Canyon Boulevard. And onto one of the most famous streets in Beverly Hills that had more celebrities, I don't know, as far as I know, than any other, in such a high concentration anyway. Charo's house. And on to Roxbury Drive. Now, there are actually two very famous redheads on this street. And the second most famous redhead, I think, in Hollywood lived in this house. This was the last home of Agnes Moorehead.
Hello, darling.
Now, I'm not going to talk about all the celebrities that lived on the street, only a couple. Left at the corner, 1000 Roxbury Drive, was the last home of Lucille Ball. On the corner of Roxbury and Lexington, for over 40 years, Lucille Ball lived in a house. That house, actually. A lot of people think that the house was destroyed, and that's not exactly true. It's still got the same shell, the windows and the door are still in the same place. But it looks very different than it did when Lucille Ball lived here. Here's a photograph of the house, the way it looked for a vast majority of the time. So you can see the bones are still there. Now, if you look really closely in this photograph, this house was left for years after Lucy died, while the family were dealing with the estate. Look at that, those trees. Those trees are significantly larger. But if you look closely at that window, you can see the shutters, and you can see there's pieces of that shutter missing. That's what this is. So that is that. Now, when they were redoing the house, this is what it looked like. So you can see it's still the same shape, still same dormers and windows, but it's just a very, very different house. Now, across the street was where Jimmy Stewart's house used to be. They actually had a garden on the corner. There was a house that was there originally on the corner, and during one of the earthquakes it was destroyed, and Gloria and Jimmy and Stewart bought the house and made it into their garden, and he lived there until he died. Very nice man, would always wave to people, was always kind to people. So that house is gone now. But in the episode of I Love Lucy, when Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance got out of the tour bus, it was actually on her own street. They got off the tour bus in front of Jimmy Stewart's house. They say they were going to see, they were going to go steal a grapefruit from Richard Widmark's tree, and they used Lucy's own house. So they show them on location getting off the bus over there, and she and Vivian Vance walking to the side of the house, and then they went to a sound stage. Now, when the house was being renovated, the side fence was actually replaced. You can see in the episode this little area, this little, I don't know what you call this little window over here, but that shows up in the episode just behind the hedges over there. But you can see this wall is a new wall. See, that shows up in the scene. Brand new wall. Now, when they destroyed the old wall, I was over here and I got some bricks from it. And one of those bricks I chopped up into pieces, and you can actually buy some of Lucy's house. That does show up on the episode of I Love Lucy. So, beautiful house. She lived here for over 40 years and lived here until she died in 1989. So they would have got off the bus right about here and walked there and across the street over to the window that's covered with hedges right now. So as you saw in the video, this is the shutter, the piece of the shutter from Lucy's house. It sat there for years after she died in some sort of, I don't know, probate, or I don't think they knew what to do with the house. So it was just falling apart. And that was part of the house. It was just falling apart. Now, I've showed you the wall from the episode of the tour from I Love Lucy. There's my brick from the wall. I actually got 2 bricks, thanks to my friend Steve. And one of those bricks I chopped up into a million pieces. And you could buy a piece of it if you go to the Dearly Departed Tours website and pull down the shop button on the top right to Souvenirs to Die For. And you'll get a piece of Lucy's house that showed up in I Love Lucy, the wall. It's down there on the bottom right of that photograph. And I'll throw in a Lucille Ball's death certificate too. Now, in 1989, about 6 weeks before she died, I wrote a letter to Lucy, and I got a response. And this is dated March 10th, 1989. And she died on April 26th, I think it was, 1989. So I got this 6 weeks before she died. And it was a canned letter, you know, just something that she sent out. Thank you for writing. So many cards and letters come in each week. I can't answer them. It makes me happy to know that you've enjoyed my shows over the years. Encloses a picture that I thought you might like. And there it is. So it's probably one of those auto pen autographs. I don't really care because I got it from Lucy myself. So I like to think it's real. And if it isn't, I don't want to hear about it. But I do have another check that was given to me by my friend Colleen Tebow, as you can see right there. And this was Lucy, the family nanny was Willie Mae Barker. And this was a check that Lucy's brother, Fred Bull, wrote to Willie Mae Barker for nanny services. The address is Gower, which is the old RKO Studios, which is then Desilu Studios, and now is Paramount Studios. Now, even though Desilu Studios bought RKO and was located on Gower at Melrose, they shot I Love Lucy on a different soundstage over on Cahuenga. And when they were renovating that, just a bunch of rubble from the place was laying around, and I was able to find this piece of the old Red Studios. So this that you see was there. It shows up, you can see it says Desilu Playhouse, where they filmed I Love Lucy. So that very lamp that you see right there is this very lamp right here. Now, this is the financial statements from Desilu from 1966. A friend of mine worked at Paramount Studios. This probably was a script cover at one point in time. Paramount acquired, the property of I Love Lucy, the entire series. And this Desilu script cover, I would imagine this was, from the shows that they filmed at RKO or Mission Impossible or Star Trek, I don't know. But I'm sure this was a script cover. However, they used it in 1966 as the Desilu financial statements. So these people were given the financial statements to I Love Lucy in an old script cover. And just the assets of Desilu Productions. It's kind of technical. It's very taxi. It's very, kind of boring to read. But it's still kind of neat. Their annual fiscal report for Desilu Productions. Now this is kind of cool because this is their physical asset. The old studio. You can see that's the old RKO globe up there. And Paramount Studios over here. The famous Paramount Studios gates are right over here. And my old apartment was right over there. I lived there for 16 years in that little apartment building right over there. That's the one that Troy and I moved from to come to where we are now. And there's the cemetery because, the cemetery used to be twice as big as it is. Paramount actually has half cemetery property, so is RKO. So those movie studios were cemetery property at one point in time. Now, when Lucy died, she had a couple of memorial services, and this is one I attended. This is the one in Chicago, though, and this was at the old St. Patrick's Church, and Herb Cupson did the eulogy for that. He was friends with her, a reporter. But it was interesting to, there were no celebrities there. It was just, it was kind of interesting. I could go to Lucy's sort of funeral, memorial service in Chicago. And, Not so lastly, this is a vial of Lucy's henna hair dye that I found. The provenance is that Lucy Arnaz donated them for some auction, but it's pretty cool that this is Lucy's famous hair dye. And a good example of why I never step too far away from my computer and I'm always checking my emails. A couple of years ago, I got an email from someone who said they had something of Lucy's that I might be interested in. And when that person told me what it was, I was within an hour over there picking up two things from this nice person. The first one is this gas station credit card that belonged to Lucy. Lucy's own Texaco gas station card. And something that goes along with the hair dye is the most incredible thing ever. This is Lucille Ball's hair sink from her home on Roxbury Drive. Lucille Ball she had a very distinctive hair color, and it had to be treated all the time, like probably every few days. It had to be touched up or once a week or whatever it was. And she had a salon in her house. And this sink actually came from her home on Roxbury Drive. After Lucy died, the house sat there for a very long period of time. This sink sat in the house, and I got contacted by a person who had possession of the sink and asked me if I wanted it. So I flew over to that person's house and got that sink. And now it sits in the archives until we reopen. Okay, so check this out. I actually found a video clip of Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance on a talk show talking about that very salon in her home. And bizarrely, it's the only time I've ever seen Lucy without red hair. But check this out. It's funny that, I have the sink.
Every so often she'd get me over there on a Saturday, and she'd put the bleach on my hair and she'd put the henna on her hair, and then we'd sit around gab we'd have old slacks on and a couple old shirts, and so we were sitting in her beautiful home in Beverly Hills, and there was a great sound of sirens and officers and motorcycles. And bleach on her, and she's got henna, and she's got the henna, and I've got the bleach. And she's got 2 cotton toes. She's got her toes all wrapped in pennies because he lives next door.
Sirens, motorcycle cops.
So I ran to the door, like my boss told me. They said, Lucille, it's here. It's here. They're all coming up the walk. They're all coming up the walk. And it looks so, and she said, well, come sit down. They'll never recognize us. So the 2 of us sat there, me with the white bleach on and her with the red bleach on and these awful clothes. And this whole entourage walked into the house and somebody bowed low. The man said, thank you very much. And we said, who was that? You know, because we'd really like to know who this entourage was that went by as the 2 of us were sitting there and said, that was the king of Siam.
So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the artifacts that we have. I enjoyed seeing them because they've been in storage for so long. And one day they'll be out on display again and you'll be able to see them in person. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I appreciate you watching The Dead Redhead. And until next time.